Hello, and a very warm welcome to all of the dear participants who have joined us for our broadcast today. Today, we have all gathered here together with you in this warm and cozy space to talk together, sharing our thoughts and ideas about such a wonderful topic as birds and bird watching. Before we proceed with the main agenda of our meeting, I kindly ask everyone to take a moment to connect to the appropriate language channel. This will ensure all participants can fully follow the upcoming discussions. Please note there are instructions on the screen. I hope that everyone who hasn't connected yet is doing so right now. And now we are going to begin our discussion with you about the wonderful and engaging hobby of bird watching, which is also commonly referred to as birding. Today, during this meeting, we will hear two words, and I hope that by the end we will understand whether there is a difference between bird watching and birding and what that difference is. The topic is announced as bird watching, a hobby that changes you and can change the world around you. How does this hobby change you? How does watching birds change a person? How does a person come to this? And why? What does this give to the world? Today, we will talk about this with our invited guests, with speakers, experts, passionate bird lovers, and people who teach everyone to love and admire birds. Everyone they can reach. Today's broadcast is part of our Global Cleanliness Challenge. This is its final concluding broadcast. Recordings of the previous ones can be found on the social media pages of the EcoPulse project. We are very happy to welcome you. We are the EcoPulse team. I am Daria Ferdian. Here with me are Nurian, our coordinator, and Artur Aganistian, our community manager, the person who informs you, reminds you that the broadcast is about to start, and helps answer your questions. We will be in touch, monitoring the chat and keeping track of your questions. Please, if you have any questions during the broadcast, write them in the chat. And in general, write in the chat. Interact with us, share your experience if you have any on today's topic. As usual, for those who are joining the broadcast for the first time as part of the Global Frequency Challenge, I'll tell you a little about EcoPulse, and also for those who will be watching the recording later. Actually, before we begin, I'd like those who have been with us for a while, wave your hand or put a plus sign in the chat. And if you also feel like part of the big EcoPulse team, please write which country and city you're joining us from today. Let us know you're here. Let's greet each other, friends. I know that right now that's the case. Everything is good. In many countries, we've already been going for 3 months. We're holding all kinds of environmental events and campaigns. Our team of activists is constantly growing. I'll be very happy to see your greetings in the chat. So I see Venezuela, Da Nang, awesome. Oh, great, Vietnam is with us, Kyrgyzstan too. Hello to everyone, friends. And Moscow is here as well. That's really nice. I'm sending you all a big, big green hello. So EcoPulse is on the line and is ready to speak with you. We have a mission that unites us all. Together, every day, we are gradually building a community, an international community without borders. A community of people for whom being eco-friendly is a way of life. Eco-friendliness in everyday life, at home, in professional activities, in business. Absolutely not. And I am glad to see that we are succeeding and our community is growing day by day. EcoPulse's big goal is to give everyone the opportunity, for every person to fulfill their environmental responsibility, to be a volunteer, to participate, to help in environmental initiatives, or if you feel such a calling in your soul, to become a leader, to lead others and implement large-scale, exciting projects that bring about tangible change. How do we operate? Well, in fact, our broadcast today is one of the ways we gather global experience from different regions so that you, in your own country and city, can take the best practices and apply them. We unite like-minded people around the world for support and inspiration. EcoPulse has been around for just over a year, but we are working very hard and have already managed to accomplish quite a lot of good, useful, and eco-friendly things. The most notable projects of last year were cleaning vandal graffiti from the sacred mountain Selimantuo in Kyrgyzstan, planting trees in Ghana, and large-scale plantings in Kyrgyzstan. Over the past year and this year, we have already held dozens of events. Most of them, of course, were related to cleaning up natural areas. These are cleanup events in nature or community work days. That's a term particularly common in Russia. But that's not all. We didn't just clean up. We organized meetings for activists, lectures, and gatherings with experts and scientists. We held eco lessons. There was a very touching meeting with school children in Ghana. We talked with them about how children and teenagers around the world are driving change and what kinds of environmental activities they are involved in. A really great large-scale event took place in June of this year, the 19th Global Cleanup Day. People, residents of 19 countries, came out on the same day to take part in a massive cleanup of litter in natural areas. That experience was so genuinely impressive that it directly inspired our team to launch the specific project we are currently working on, which is in fact the very initiative that this broadcast is a part of. I'm talking now about the Global Cleanup Challenge. It's a 3-month marathon that's already nearing its end. It will conclude on September 20th. This date is timed to coincide with World Cleanup Day. It's an international initiative that probably unites almost every country in the world by now. On this day, everyone comes together at the same time to clean up nature, to eliminate the consequences of our irresponsible attitude toward it. And I urge you to join both our challenge and this global initiative. Let me tell you a little about how the challenge has been going. You should understand that even if you haven't actively participated in it or haven't participated at all, you can still join in this week and complete some of the simple tasks that were given during the challenge and earn points. We started on June 21st and now the challenge is about to end. In 16 countries, I'm not even sure how many cities, we have participants who have been completing tasks, earning points, and at the end of the challenge, the most active participants will receive gifts. Among the leaders, we will raffle off a Super 3. These are just some interim results. Of course, we will sum up the final results after the challenge ends. Today, we have 16 participating countries. Kilometers of shorelines, rivers, forests, groves, and even urban areas have been cleaned of litter by the challenge participants. Our participants organized creative events. They held lectures. They staged wonderfully themed performances and also organized very successful clothing swap events. And of course, our participants also had the opportunity to attend and increase their environmental awareness during insightful live sessions with various experts, one of which is actually happening later today, which is the last and final one of the series. You can still join in. To do so, please write in the chat right now, I want to join the challenge if you haven't participated yet, or scan the QR code. Our community manager will contact you, give you instructions, and please follow them. This week, you can definitely do something good for yourself and the world and earn bonus points. What tasks besides cleanups could be done and can still be completed? You can join a cleanup event organized by others. You can find and share information with us about local environmental projects. or you can make a post or repost about EcoPulse or the challenge on your social media. You can take great photos on environmental topics or participate in a creative contest. And of course, taking part in today's broadcast will also earn you points. At the end of our broadcast, we will also give a special assignment related to the topic. And if you complete it, you will also receive points. Basically, any opportunities related to environmental topics. Educational activities that are encouraged with points are all part of our cleanliness challenge. Let's talk a little bit about the prizes. Of course, it's important to us that the gifts you receive are not only beautiful, but also genuinely useful, so that they attract the attention of those around you and help you involve your loved ones, friends, or even fellow city residents in important environmental activities and in caring for our precious nature. As I already mentioned, one of the ways you can earn points is by participating in educational broadcasts. We didn't come up with them just for the sake of it. We fully understand that receiving this knowledge from someone who truly loves and is deeply involved in the subject is a great support. Is not just about learning, it's also about inspiration. That's why I wish for all our participants to experience exactly that today, to be inspired by the example of our esteemed guests, our speakers. In today's broadcast, we will be discussing what the term birdwatching is, what birding is, what this engaging hobby is all about, and what its many potential benefits are, and why it is popular, how to identify birds and why to do it, and how birding or birdwatching competitions are held. It turns out such competitions do exist. People compete to see who can observe birds better. And of course, an important point is that this is not just some kind of entertainment, it's a hobby that actually helps science. Our speakers today represent two countries. Nikolai Ivanson is joining us today from Argentina. Yulia Gorelova is from Russia. And by the way, today we're talking about birds from both sides of the ocean. I would like you, together with our esteemed guests, to follow the journey from. It's truly fascinating to see how an initial curiosity about birds can transform into such a passionate love that it eventually becomes a person's entire life's work. And now, with that in mind, I would like to give the floor to Nikolai so he can share his own personal birding journey with all of us. I believe I've talked a little longer than planned, so I will stop here. Please give me a moment while I stop sharing my screen. Yes, I managed to do it. Nikolai, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. A big hello to everyone from Argentina. Can you hear me well? Can you see my presentation? Everything is perfectly audible and visible. Great, super. Well, a few words about myself so you understand who I am, what I do, and how I came to this path. Initially, I worked in the venture industry. We invested in startups. I completed my higher education in the field of food engineering. And now I've become a bird watcher and I produce tea. I am a sommelier of mate and currently live in Argentina. So how did I come to this? The thing is, just 5 years ago in Russia, I happened to read an article about bird watching. And I thought, wow, people actually spend their time watching birds. That seemed really unusual to me. Why give this a specific name? Why organize events around it? Why turn it into a separate movement? I would often hear people say, but in our bustling concrete cities, all you ever really see are just the common sparrows and pigeons. But as I started to get more involved in this wonderful community, I began to discover for myself that there was so much more to see. There are a lot of benefits to birdwatching, and I'm sure you also have a lot of questions when you hear this word. Today, I want to not only share my own journey and how I made it a part of my life, but also answer your questions about what it is and why it matters. Of course, my journey began with the fact that I loved dinosaurs since childhood. I always watched movies. Surely you know Jurassic Park and The Land Before Time. That was a key film for our generation. But you might ask me, what do bird watching and dinosaurs have to do with each other, or even birds in general? It's very simple. The thing is, birds are,
Nikolai, excuse me, but it appears there is a gray rectangle showing up on the screen, and unfortunately it is covering the beak of the modern duck that we are discussing.
I see now. Let's do it like this. Is that better?
Nothing has changed yet. Oh, now it's better. Thank you.
Yes, birds are the direct descendants of dinosaurs. You can see this in their skeleton as well. In other words, the bird has essentially discarded everything unnecessary for flight. And I see this not only in the skeleton, but also in the bird's behavior when I observe it in the wild. If you watch how birds behave, you'll definitely notice how much they resemble dinosaurs. And moreover, this is roughly how a dromaeosaur should look throughout the entire Jurassic Park movie. Already with feathers, almost with wings, but still not able to fly. And so my passion for diadectomorphs turned into bird watching. And this led to the fact that already in Argentina, I started doing more professional bird watching. When I first arrived in Argentina, I spent 6 months after seeing this diversity of birds studying them because, of course, the birds in Russia are different from those in Argentina. After Russia, I watched birds in Turkey just for myself. But here, I started organizing ornithological tours. We've been offering them for 2 years now. We've held them for 1,500 people, which is about 6% of the Russian-speaking population of Buenos Aires. And my personal goal with this project isn't even to make money, although this project is commercially successful. But we do make money from it because I believe that people who come to us and pay, they leave with information that they will later use in their lives. But my second goal, and probably the main one, is to help people get to know the world of nature through birds. I believe that a person who loves birds, loves animals, loves nature, simply cannot be, well, it's a bold statement, but they can't be a bad person. They will do everything they can to help nature in the future. Now we are expanding even further. We are starting to introduce tours in Argentina, not only focused on birds, but also on animals. And moreover, we've even started making tea. We take a certain Argentine bird, we study it. For example, here we took a duck. We study where it lives, what it eats, what the tea feeds on. And we try to convey the taste of nature through tea. This is also a successful project, which helps us finance our other projects. So today I'll try to tell you a little about what bird watching is and maybe even motivate you to start doing something similar. Although there are a lot of nuances. And for myself, I've identified 5 reasons why it's worth getting into bird watching. Next, I'll tell you a little bit more in more detail about each point: travel, community, a lifelong hobby, meditation, and training. This last one is a very important point. Travel, if you can see on the map, Argentina, the places I've already visited, and some places on this map are not touristy at all. There are no architectural landmarks, no interesting natural sites. However, there are birds living there that you won't find in Buenos Aires, where I live. And this hobby constantly motivates me to travel to all corners of Argentina, to Chile, to Uruguay, to Brazil, and to see as many birds as possible and observe them. So this is a very important point, bird watching. It will definitely motivate you to travel and notice the lives of birds and animals wherever you are. The second very important point, bird watching is a big community. If you want to meet very interesting people who are also highly educated and earn quite a lot, you can become a bird watcher. It's like golf. According to the available statistical information, and while these are primarily United States statistics, it's important to know they generally reflect the global trend and also include some global numbers. People who enjoy bird watching as a hobby typically have a higher overall level of education and also a higher average income. From this data, it is also clearly visible that the share of participants up to, simply put, the higher the level of education, and it's easy to tell who is in front of you, a successful person or not. Many people look for friends in other communities, for example, among entrepreneurs. But it's impossible to really understand entrepreneurs, whether they're truly successful or just say they are. With bird watchers, it's much easier to tell, and I'll explain how later. Here is a map showing where the largest number of bird observations have been registered. You can see that the most developed countries, which have already met their basic economic needs, are the most represented on this map. These are the USA, Europe, and Australia. And Australia, even though it's quite a desert country, still has a lot of bird watching activity. So how can you tell if someone is a successful bird watcher? It's very easy, by the number. By the number, some people say, I have 10, I have 15, I have 20, and sometimes we don't even know what that means. But that's the list of birds that a person has seen for the first time in their life. Every bird watcher keeps such a list from the very first bird. For me, it was sparrows and pigeons, oddly enough, to the last one over the course of their life. And there's this golden ratio that helps us determine that those with higher numbers are already more experienced, and we strive for that as well. That number is 200. Why is it called the golden ratio? Because, well, in your local area, you can spot 100 species fairly easily. Just travel around your region and find those 100. But after that, it gets harder and harder. You need to invest in equipment. You need to invest time in trips to see 200 birds and more. I have 333, a beautiful number, but I do not try to constantly increase it. I am more interested in observing the lives of birds, not just adding to my list. By the way, there are different kinds of birders, some who observe bird behavior and some who chase numbers. Those exist too. You can choose what kind you want to be. Both approaches are interesting. Birdwatching is not just about the community, and not only birdwatching is also a lifelong hobby. If you want to find a hobby that you'll never get bored of and can do for a very long time, birdwatching is definitely it. Here you can see probably the most popular and well-known birdwatcher in the world, Peter. He is 72 years old and has been birdwatching for a very long time, about 50 years. He has visited 181 countries. And how many birds do you think he has seen? You can write in the chat how many birds you think he has seen and how many bird species there are in the world. He is undoubtedly very successful. But he has a slight advantage. You could even call it a life hack. He spent most of his life working as a diplomat, which allowed him to travel to different countries around the world at the government's expense. He worked as a diplomat for the United States. So how many birds has he seen?
Do you have any guesses?
Your guesses, but 10,000 bird species, that's the number. He was the first person in the world to see 10,000 species of birds. And what's more, he even discovered a new bird species in Colombia, if I'm not mistaken. Can you imagine how fascinating that is? You travel and you might even discover a bird that no one knew about before you. And yet, after 50 years of bird watching, he still hasn't seen all the birds in the world. Because there are about 11,000 bird species, give or take. The thing is, the number of bird species is constantly changing. New birds are added, classifications change every year, so you can count on about 11,000. So I really hope that if you start bird watching, of course, you'll get hooked and maybe even see all the birds. I hope for that. As for meditation and this kind of slowing down, probably. And honestly, that's true. When we first start bird watching, it brings us joy. We walk through parks and every bird is new to us. We record it, identify it easily, and relax. We breathe in the fresh air. But this usually stops after about 20 or 30 birds. Because then a situation like the one on the slide starts to happen. All the birds shown here are different, but it's very hard to identify them. They often just look like some gray blur flying past you. They're also very small, they fly by very quickly, they don't stay on one branch, they're constantly moving. And it's very hard to identify them. And at this point, it's not just meditation anymore. but also excitement. Identifying this, figuring out which bird it is really fascinating and brings a special kind of joy, especially when it comes to gulls. There are all sorts of gulls, especially the young ones, and for a non-expert, it's very hard to tell them apart. There are even special bird watchers who focus only on gulls, and for them, identifying a young gull is also a challenge. But then the question arises, why do this? Why try to identify a bird if they all look so similar? The approach here is very simple. You need to break the bird down into parts. Of course, you should do this in your mind, not physically, and consider each part of the bird's body separately. The length of the tail, the length of the beak, the color of the beak, the color of the eyes, whether it has a crest or not, the length of the wings, the color of the feathers under the bird's belly, for example. Each of these parameters can give us a clue as to what kind of bird we're looking at. And it's important to understand this if we want to do bird watching for our whole lives. Bird watching is also, it has a positive effect on our memory. For example, right now I have to learn the names of birds in 4 languages. That's Russian, my native language, English, because I plan to give tours in English as well, Spanish, because I'm in Argentina, a Spanish-speaking country, and of course Latin. That's the universally accepted language for scientific names of birds. And it would be fine. Everything would be great if bird names could just be translated literally. But fortunately, that's not the case. Unfortunately, that's not the case, although there are some examples where the names are the same in all 4 languages, but that happens very rarely. And now I'll show you what I have to do, how I have to memorize the names of different species. Here in front of you is the red-necked graybar. Well, you might think it's strange too. Its neck isn't red at all. And now here's how it sounds in Latin. In English, for some reason, it's called the horrible grebe. It's unclear why. I have to remember that. In English, it's called the horned grebe, also strange. And in Spanish, unfortunately, it often matches the Russian name, so I have to learn less in this case. Okay, let's move on. We have the red-cheeked grebe. Well, here it's clear. It has a red cheek. That sounds logical. But in English, it's also logical. And if we look at the English name, it's the red-necked grebe, just like in Russian, like the previous bird. And the Spanish name also matches the English one. Sometimes we get lucky, sometimes we don't. But again, you constantly have to learn and memorize these names. I think, for example, that Alzheimer's disease definitely doesn't threaten bird watchers because you always have to train yourself, your memory, and remember all these strange names. There are even some funny names that I don't even want to get into. That's a whole other story. Maybe later I'll do a separate lecture on this topic. And I haven't mentioned what is probably the most important aspect of bird watching for me. It's helping science. Yes, of course, there's travel, the community, memory. Hobbies are very important. They help make our lives brighter, more interesting, and more emotional. But first and foremost, it's about helping science. Because every birder is, and I'm not afraid to say it, a citizen scientist. And we help scientists collect big data that they can use in their research. The thing is, there are naturally very few professional ornithologists, but birders, there are a lot of them. It's one of the most popular hobbies in the world. About 1 in 4 people is considered a birder. That's a huge number. So how can we help? How can we help science with the help of resources? For example, eBird is the largest and most popular resource for birders where we can submit our observations. With the help of this resource, scientists can already use this data and perform their analysis. So what can they do? For example, we can understand, here in the picture it's shown, how swallows migrate from South America to Canada. We can understand not only how they migrate, but also where they are more widespread, where there are more of them, and where there are fewer. You can see that the populations are divided into 2. In the US, we can see another population that migrates from Argentina to Venezuela. So this gives us very large data sets. And these are the data that scientists use and can, for example, study the connection between bird migrations and rainfall in India, for instance, how they influence each other, how climate change affects the number of birds. How can we perhaps help birds come up with a different migration route if the existing one doesn't suit them? All of this helps with making a plan. What should we do to help scientists? It's not just about going out to the park and observing. Ideally, we should record every observation in a database. It's actually quite easy. At the very least, we should identify the bird species and the number. Ideally, we should also determine their behavior. Is it a nesting bird or a migratory bird? Ideally, we should also determine the age and sex. And that's even more valuable. And it's also important when we submit the data to indicate that this is a complete list of all the birds we saw. Because this helps scientists to understand not only whom we saw, but also whom we didn't see. This will also provide certain, and I sincerely hope that after this lecture, you will feel inspired to go out and do some bird watching. So I want to take a moment to briefly tell you about the very important Birdwatchers Code of Conduct. First and foremost, we are entering the home of birds, the home of animals. So just as we behave when we are guests, we must be very careful and very cautious. We do not chase birds or other animals, we do not make noise, and we do not make sudden movement. We never look for bird nests, we do not feed the birds, and we do not leave any litter behind. And if we see any trash that was left by others, if possible, we can pick it up. So, and if I would like to recommend a few sources to you that I believe might inspire you. These are probably the sources that had a big impact on me personally and have really touched me deeply. So my first strong recommendation is the movie The Big Year, a wonderful, great comedy about bird watchers. And then the second film is Spread Your Wings, which is actually based on true real-life events about a scientist. Using an airplane, changed the migration route of geese and created a new migratory path for them. I also highly recommend the film My Octopus Teacher. Of course, it's not about birds, but about nature, because in any case, through birds, we come to understand nature, we come to understand this world. Our Planet from Netflix. The podcast How to Annoy a Polar Bear is our podcast. We made it ourselves together with the IMF organization. And of course, Vitya has seen the famous podcast that's produced in Russia. I really hope you'll join this club of nature lovers. It's very easy to do. First and foremost, you need the desire. Second, of course, is a simple pair of binoculars. But you can start even without binoculars. And then you'll need materials like bird guides for different regions. Later, you'll start building your own collection and learn more and more about how birds affect our lives. I'll be waiting for you. And if you have any questions, you can ask me personally later or within the framework of this lecture. Now I'll hand things over to Julia, who will tell you in more detail how to make birdwatching even more exciting. Thank you.
Nikolai, thank you so much. It's truly fascinating how each and every person discovers their own unique path to the wonderful hobby of birdwatching. Our colleagues are inviting you to explore the world of birds in Venezuela. It would be wonderful to visit. And in fact, there are questions in the chat, but I suggest that we return to all the questions at the end of our meeting. We'll have a chance to read them out then. Right now, our community managers are collecting them from the chat, so don't worry. Please know that all the questions you write in the chat will definitely be addressed by our speakers. And if Nikolai previously talked about what you can do on your own, for example, armed with just your binoculars, a camera, and a strong desire to observe birds, then you absolutely can get started. Do it alone. And now I would be delighted for Yulia Gorilova to tell us about the formats that transform birdwatching into a truly exciting adventure, a spirited competition, and something that genuinely brings people together, sparking a real and lasting enthusiasm in them. I would now like to give the floor to our next speaker, Yulia Vitalievna Gorilova. She is the long-standing director and also the head of the commercial partnership known as Birds and People. This is an organization which, for a great many years, has been very actively engaged in promoting and, as a result, also contributing in a major way to the overall development and advancement of ornithological science right across Russia. Yulia, please, the floor is yours. Colleagues, please help Yulia connect her presentation.
Thank you, Daria. Hello, everyone. Sending greetings to everyone from Moscow. I'm very pleased to have been invited to take part in this lecture, in this event. I'm happy to share how we organize team competitions. We've been doing this for almost 20 years now. Next year will mark 20 years. It will be 20 years since we held our first competitions in birding. Daria began her lecture by asking whether there is any difference between birding and birdwatching. There is no difference at all. Please use whichever term feels closer to you, whichever you prefer. We prefer birding because, in my opinion, when we talk about competitions, this term is more emotional and better reflects what we do. Please, next slide. And what we do is organize team competitions. Nikolai has already discussed in detail why birds are such a wonderful and fascinating subject for observation. This brings up an interesting question. Why is it that a popular hobby like birding has formed so specifically around this particular group of animals, the birds? On the one hand, watching birds is quite difficult and rather athletic, but on the other hand, birds are all around us. Birds, in their incredible diversity, surround us almost everywhere we go. This makes them the perfect kind of subject with which you can begin your personal acquaintance with nature. The act of observing birds, known as birdwatching, or more generally, birding, is actually a unique form of collecting. By filling out a checklist of species you've seen and watching your personal lifetime life list grow, you are essentially creating your very own collection. While some people might collect physical items like pins, stamps, or coins, a birder's collection is one of priceless moments and sightings. A birder adds new species to their life list. Of course, as Nikolai said, bird watching can simply take the form of observing birds, watching their lives. Many people start their journey in birding by watching birds at feeders, and we recommend this to beginner birders. It's quite simple, but still, in order to fill your life list, you need to travel. You need to visit nature reserves and national parks. Of course, first in your own country, and then gradually expand the scope of your travels. Next slide, please. Why a competition? Because a competition is the format that most motivates participants to engage in birding. Competitions are held in different countries. When we started organizing competitions here in Russia 20 years ago, the first competition was held in Moscow, in a specially protected natural area of Moscow. Then we had competitions in the Crane Homeland Reserve, a wonderful reserve near Moscow. We simply held them in the format of observations. You see a bird, you mark it in the checklist. But in this format, and this is how competitions are held in other countries, only people who know birds well can participate in the contests. And our very first participants were primarily birders. We were fortunate to have international teams, and there were also members of young naturalist clubs who knew the local birds wonderfully. However, these types of competitions were not particularly widespread back then. So we decided that we should introduce photographing birds and make that the main central element of these gatherings. And so when we held the very first competition that was specifically focused on bird photography, we were delighted to find that the total number of participants had in fact increased quite dramatically. precisely because anyone can photograph birds, then work with the photo. And once you identify the bird, it's much easier to remember it. So in this sense, photography became a kind of life hack, serving as a unique bridge that connects people to the world of birds. This newfound connection has grown so strong that we now hold competitions specifically dedicated to the art of photographing birds. Of course, birds should be photographed with cameras. For those of you who are new to birding, we want to clarify that using mobile phones is absolutely permitted. And I want to say that, as Nikolai mentioned here, birding is often seen as a hobby for wealthy and well-off people who are satisfied with life. But in the competition format, our birding is for everyone. No special preparation is required. We invite everyone to join. And school teams participate in our competitions, especially in other cities. When we start working with people, we naturally reach out to teachers and students. Students bring their parents along. And for example, in Moscow, where for 15 years now we have been holding the Capital Cup in sports ornithology twice a year during the spring and autumn migrations, our main participants are family teams. Because a family team is in essence already a team, and it's very easy to coordinate within it. And of course, birding is an extremely popular hobby. In Russia, it's still not as popular as it is in other countries. Nevertheless, I think that here, birding can only compete in popularity with gardening and vegetable growing. Next slide, please. I was wondering, what are the primary rules and regulations that apply to all of our competitions? We hold competitions in various formats. These include walking competitions that take place within a designated area. Most often, this is a specially protected natural area at a specific time. We allocate 2, 3, or 4 hours for the competition, depending on the team's overall level of preparation. For example, at the capital's Sports Ornithology Cup, our participants spend 3 or 4 hours photographing birds, depending on the size of the area. And during this time, participants must photograph as many birds as possible. After that, once the competition is over, we give the teams 3 days to work with their photos. And during these 3 days, they use a special platform developed for the competition, an online platform. It's called sturgbirding.ru. Our participants upload their photos and fill out a checklist. After that, a jury consisting of professional ornithologists and experienced birders checks the accuracy of the team's bird species identification. A special technical secretary also conducts checks. We have very strict competition regulations, and the secretary checks whether the teams are complying with these rules. We tally up the results, and the winning team is the one that photographed and correctly identified the largest number of bird species, which usually correlates with the number of points earned for each particular bird species. At these types of beginner competitions, we will usually assign a certain number of points to each individual species, all on a completely voluntary basis. But in contrast, at the more long-running competitions, for instance, like the ones held in Moscow, for us, based on the frequency of sightings, each species in every subsequent competition is assigned a certain number of points, which is not determined by us, but is established according to how often that species has been encountered in all previous competitions. Please, next slide. By the way, almost all the photos used in this presentation are from our competitions, either car-based or on foot. Here are the car-based competitions. Here, of course, you understand that one car equals one team. For the walking competitions, we have a set rule that a team consists of 2 to 5 participants, and only at the Capital Cup did we introduce a new category for soloists, which allows a single person to participate. But in the car-based competitions, one car is one team. Usually that's 3 or 4 people. Before the competition, we lay out an interesting route. It usually covers about 150 kilometers, no more. It's interesting from an ornithological point of view. These are, of course, wetlands. There are fields, meadows, and lots of rivers. In general, we try to create a route that covers the maximum number of habitats and involves not only traveling by car, but of course walking as well. Technically, these competitions are traditionally called birding rallies, but the only rally element is the car and passing through checkpoints. Along the road, you have to reach a certain number of checkpoints. To take a checkpoint means that the whole team takes a photo in front of a certain object, which is usually designated in advance by the organizers. Usually our checkpoints are located in the most interesting places from an ornithological point of view. And of course, the winning team is the one that photographs and correctly identifies the largest number of bird species. Please, next slide. For those traveling by car, rest assured that the entire route is fully accessible for vehicles of any class. We have specifically designed the itinerary to avoid any off-road sections, laying out the journey entirely along public roads. If any of you not only want to participate in the competition, but also organize such an event, these details might be useful for you. In general, if you decide to organize your own competition, please feel free to contact us. Daria will provide all the contact information you need to reach us. We have a full set of standard regulations for both pedestrian and car competitions. And we also provide standard instructions to clearly explain the rules for beginners. We can provide comprehensive support for your competition, and we can also organize the entire submission process for photos and the subsequent judging for absolutely everyone, all on our robust technical platform. So with that in mind, please, if you are interested, we would love for you to join our team. We will happily organize these wonderful competitions together with you. Let's move on to the next slide, please. If you've decided you want to find out more detailed information about where and when a competition is taking place, we encourage you to visit our website, Birdabrew, or feel free to write to us at info.bjr. For the competition itself, please note our official platform is birding.ru. These are the essential resources that we are happy to provide for you. Please make use of them. All these photos that you see on the screen right now were taken at competitions. A wonderful team in camouflage in front of our flag. Birds and People is actually the name of a very famous Belarusian team, which is also widely known by the name Bulbashi. And this team has won our competitions several times, which have taken place both in the Moscow region and in the Smolenskoye Puzarie National Park. A very strong and powerful team of birders. By the way, none of its members are professional ornithologists. They are all amateur ornithologists. Next slide, please. What kind of equipment do we actually recommend for those of you who will be participating in the competitions? Of course, you need cameras. If you don't have a camera yet and are just starting your journey in birding, you can use mobile phones for taking pictures. It's difficult. Although nowadays, in general, the cameras in the latest models are getting better and better. And at our competitions, it's quite common for even school children to take very high quality photos with mobile phones. To submit a photo at our competitions, very high quality is not required. The photo just needs to show the identifying features of the bird species, as Nikolai mentioned. Because it's important that two similar species, for example, if we're talking about warblers or sparrows, can be distinguished from each other. High quality photos are not necessary. If you have binoculars, that will really help you participate in the competition. But even after you return from the competition and start analyzing your photos, you will of course need field guides. Bird field guides are the foundation of everything. It's best to use paper field guides. So what exactly is a field guide? Nikolai has already provided a wonderful introduction and started talking about this subject. And now I would like to draw your attention specifically to this one particular point. A field guide is not just an atlas with drawings or photographs. It's an atlas where similar bird species are shown on the same page and their distinguishing features are illustrated or highlighted in the photographs. Now, I want to show you a wonderful field guide by Svensson, Collins, and Bergleit. This is a comprehensive field guide that has been designed for you to utilize across the entire continent of Europe. And it's important to note we mean that in its broadest possible sense. In Russia, there are now very detailed field guides available for all regions. There is the 2-volume Birds of the European part of Russia and the 2-volume Ryabetsky's Birds of Siberia. These are very good field guides. Birds of Russia is a field guide with the Rosy Gull by Koblik and Mikhailov. And just recently, another excellent field guide was published. Nikolai was talking about how difficult it is to identify gulls. It's practically impossible. Nevertheless, Viktor Anatolievich Zubaikin, Evgeny Koblik, and Alexei Masalov have published a field guide called Gull Birds of Russia and Adjacent Regions. It's a wonderful, up-to-date field guide. Please, next slide. Of course, birds can be identified using more than just the traditional paper field guides that come in book format. Generally, there are 2 distinct types: comprehensive desk guides and the more portable field guides. A field guide is designed to be a compact companion that you can put in your pocket, helping you with identification directly along your route. By the way, during competitions, we don't recommend spending time using field guides. Take photos of the birds, then you can come back later when you have time. Please, next slide. Of course, you can find many excellent new apps on the internet. A wonderful mobile application called BirdNet serves as a useful digital field guide, which can greatly assist you in identifying a particular species of bird just by making a recording of its song. You record a fragment of the song, and so by using that audio fragment, with the invaluable assistance of the BirdNet application, you can accurately identify the specific bird species. And of course, for those interested, here is another fantastic application to consider, the Comprehensive Birds of Russia Guide. Here you can see a wonderful bird, the Siberian jay, also known as the Siberian grouse. By the way, just 3 days ago, together with a group of birders, we photographed this extremely rare bird, one of the rarest birds in the world, in its natural habitat in the Zaya Nature Reserve, in the Far East, in the Amur region, on the border with Yakutia. Please, next slide. Well, everyone starts birding at a very young age. The earlier you start filling out your life list, and what this really means is that you'll have so much more time to dedicate yourself to becoming just as exceptionally cool and admired as that truly amazing grandfather that Nikolai was just telling you about, the one who is actually the celebrated world champion in the wonderful activity of birding. His list includes 10,000 species of birds. These young enthusiasts certainly got an early start, and I would imagine that by this point in time, their personal life lists already contain a truly impressive number of different bird species. So, that brings us to a fundamental question. What exactly is most important for identifying a bird? If you manage to take a photo of it, you should look at the bird from several angles. By the way, in our competitions, we allow up to 3 photos of the same bird species to be submitted, because different identifying features can be visible from different angles. And of course, it's important to make sure that the species actually occurs in your region, so you don't make a mistake. On our dedicated online platform, which is birding.ru, you will have the opportunity to find comprehensive species lists of birds for a wide variety of different geographical regions. Now let's please move on to the next slide. According to our official rules, which we use in competitions, it is strictly not permitted to photograph birds that are in enclosures or any domesticated birds like chickens, turkeys, and so forth. The birds photographed must be genuinely wild, living in a complete state of natural freedom. And please remember, the camera's file properties must clearly show the current date and the exact time. This detail is absolutely essential because it is by these specific properties of the photo that we can officially determine and verify that the photograph was in fact taken during the official competition period. Please, next slide. As I already mentioned, we invite not only professional ornithologists to the jury, but also experienced birders. So why is that? Because usually professional ornithologists specialize in a specific small group of birds. But birders are people who travel all over the world, photographing and identifying a huge number of bird species. And if the birders are also photographers, just imagine the enormous amount of photographic material they are constantly analyzing. That is exactly why they have such a well-trained eye. And for this very reason, birders are in fact among the most qualified people who can participate as judges. Please, let's move on to the next slide. Nikolai mentioned this in his part of the presentation. Birding is, of course, a part of scientific volunteering. It's a part of ornithological monitoring, and for many specially protected natural areas in Moscow, as well as planned territories, for example. For the first time, it was precisely based on the competitions we conducted that species lists of birds were compiled. And sometimes even in areas where ornithological monitoring is conducted regularly and nature chronicles are kept, such as in nature reserves and national parks. It is thanks to these competitions that a new bird species for the area can be discovered. For example, the Belarusian team once did this in Smolenskoye Puzere National Park, where the brambling was added to the local species list. And then during another competition, the birding rally in the same park, the black kite was added to the list of bird species for this area. Why is a birding competition a good way to identify the bird species present in a given area? Because teams of people go out who either know birds well or strive for accurate identification. And being on the territory at the same time, they reveal the species composition in a fairly representative way. If you have a relatively small area, a competition is the best way to identify the bird species present in that area. Please, next slide. While participating in these competitions, it's entirely possible for you to make a genuine scientific discovery, much like the remarkable achievement of the young children from the tiny village of Purnema, located on the scenic shores of the White Sea. This is the Onezhskoye Pomorye National Park, where we came to conduct training sessions for school children. And for the first time, the school children took part in a birding competition, went up to the high bank of the White Sea, and pointed the spotting scope at the sand spit formed by the Purnema River, where it flows into the Vanezhsky Bay. And they said, Yulia Vitalievna, what's that moving over there? I looked and saw that it was a huge number of some kind of sandpipers. Not far from this spot, ornithologists were conducting monitoring. We didn't go down there, just took pictures of these birds, then reached the professional ornithologists, and they said it was a discovery of global significance. This was because the children had actually observed and then successfully photographed an exceptionally large flock, which was estimated to contain approximately 15,000 individual birds. The Icelandic sandpiper, Red-Knot Calidris canutus, is a species that has been officially listed in the Red Book of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, and is also a species listed in the National Red Book of Russia. This is a small sandpiper that typically spends its winters far away in South Africa and builds its nests in the remote northern Taimyr region. It travels along the extensive East Atlantic migratory route, passing through the White Sea before reaching the coast of the Arctic Ocean, and then continues its flight along this coast all the way to Taimyr. So the interesting thing is that from South Africa, this little bird sets off in small groups of 2, 3, 4, or 5 individuals, and in these same small groups, they arrive at Taimyr. We called professional ornithologists who monitor Taimyr from the bird banding center, from the Russian bird banding center, and asked them. They said, yes, the birds are arriving little by little, and somewhere along the migration route, there must have been a stopover for these sandpipers. And the ornithologist said that this discovery was hanging on the tip of a pencil. But until the children who came to the competition from the small village of Purnima discovered this stopover, it was unknown to professional ornithologists. The children made a genuine ornithological discovery. And naturally, this discovery was reported at international conferences. And there was a publication in a Russian ornithological journal. In short, if you decide to become a birder, if you decide to take part in competitions, you also have a chance to make a real ornithological discovery. Please, next slide. Well, and now I suppose it's Daria's turn to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm already really looking forward to the upcoming Moscow competitions. All of this is truly very inspiring. I can't even imagine what those kids felt when they discovered that stopover site. The one real ornithologist had been searching for and just couldn't find. And so there you have it. Hooray! The kids were the ones who made this discovery. It really is impressive. Dear participants of our webinar today, I want to say that I have had the experience of taking part in competitions organized by Yulia Gorelova, both in the walking format and in the Dordin-Kraly format, and all of it is incredibly exciting. And it really does spark an interest in understanding the identifying features and the list of bird species inhabiting a particular area. And right there next to the birds, there are also plants. In general, your horizons expand in an incredible way. And here, as Nikolai said, I hope he doesn't remember the name in the wrong language. Overall, in my opinion, it's a real bargain. Just a couple of years ago, I was far from this, but to me, this is an activity that not only broadens your horizons, it is also aesthetically very pleasing because you go out into nature and interact with its beauty. I ask you to send your questions if you haven't already done so in the chat with our speaker. Please write in. In the meantime, I will ask all the questions that have come in earlier. And here's something interesting. Nikolai shared the number of bird species on his list. Yulia, how many species are on your life list? Do you keep track?
No, I don't keep a life list. I'm more of an organizer, but I do know that probably the person in Russia with the most bird species on their life list is Evgeny Koblik, a wonderful person, a professional ornithologist, a candidate of biological sciences, the author of many field guides, and a remarkable wildlife artist. This is a person who, as far as I know, has more than 2,000 bird species on his life list. He travels all over the world, photographing, drawing, and observing birds everywhere he goes.
Thank you very much. Now, a question for Nikolai. Our colleagues, our listeners said that you have a beautiful number in your list, but where do you keep track of it? What is it? Is it some kind of special app? Is it a spreadsheet of some sort? Where are these birds recorded? Yes, yes, yes.
I really want this number to stop being beautiful and to keep growing and growing.
But
for now, that's how it is, yes. So it's tracked in the Merlin Bird ID app. Earlier, I showed eBird. This app was created by scientists from Cornell University, and they also made the Merlin Bird app. It's a bird identifier. It helps you identify birds by sound, by photo, or by their song. And when you spot something interesting, the app automatically creates a list for you. You can always look back at someone in the app and remember those wonderful moments.
That's great. Thank you. I think that when we prepare the summary post about today's broadcast, we, together with the esteemed experts, will get together and create a kind of checklist. What a beginner birdwatcher should have, which apps to use. We'll combine all of this and also make it publicly available. There was such a question. Perhaps Nikolai Kvam, I would like to open a similar birdwatching club dedicated to birds in Venezuela. What should we do? What should we do to make this happen?
Well, first of all, I really envy those who are in Venezuela because it's a small country with a great variety of habitats, so many birds, an enormous number, and I would gladly go there and see it all myself. Well, the question is, who is the audience? Russian speakers or locals? But whoever it is, you just need to start by creating some groups, start running Instagram, Telegram, post content there, and of course, organize excursions for beginners. Because obviously, it's not about the experienced birders, but we need to attract beginners to our side since they have a lot of questions. What is this for? Is it interesting? Who do you go with? And so on. And we, as advocates, you could say, of bird watching, need to gently introduce people to it. And yes, I recommend starting with excursions.
The next question, apparently continuing this topic, was already mentioned, that it's a boring little country. But what about, well, is it difficult to popularize bird watching and boarding? Because after all, people who haven't experienced it really do think it's strange and boring. And I guess this question is for both of our speakers today.
Well, yes, I'll continue. Yes, it is very difficult, which is why I recommend presenting this information in the simplest language possible, not in scientific terms, with as much humor as possible, in a simplified way. And probably, you need to find their format. Once we came up with this format based on an old program where we photographed birds and overlaid the sound of their singing. And it just blew up among our subscribers. Many people wrote to us, all because we created this format with old bird sounds. And surely you'll find something of your own, something that, for example, will resonate with 5 people. But again, for example, if we're talking about the Russian community in Argentina, it was easier because there aren't that many people here who offer tours in general. So people go to everyone who leads tours. And then I show up with birds. It's unusual. It's interesting. These are unfamiliar birds for the Russian community, and that creates its own path.
I see. Thank you very much. Julia, what do you think? Is it difficult to popularize birding? It seems strange and boring.
As I already said, in my opinion, competition is an excellent and powerful motivator. Because you can take part in a competition even if you don't know anything about birds at all. For example, this year we held a competition for the first time in the small town of Nizhnevartovsk at a lake located in the city center. Students, school teams, teachers, and families all took part, and people were amazed. They said, "Wow, there are so many birds on our lake." In other words, they had no idea at all. And then they asked, when will the next competition be? By the way, for many people, this competition format is, I don't know, it's their favorite. They look forward to these competitions. They might not be able to find enough internal motivation to just go out into nature, take excursions, and discover new bird species on their own. They need someone to bring them together and give them a push, to give them a bit of momentum. And competitions, of course, are the optimal format for this.
Great, thank you. Well, I just want to thank you for creating the conditions that give people different kinds of motivation to go out into nature, enjoy it, and get to know it. Another important question that arose concerned the specific equipment considered essential for effectively observing birds within their natural habitats. Many people are becoming concerned that the hobby of birding or bird watching is not actually as accessible as one might initially think. The primary reason for this is because the deeper you get into it, you will inevitably want to capture much clearer photographs from increasingly farther distances. So, as a result, if you get seriously into observing birds over the long run, you will eventually find that you need to have very good, high-quality equipment to meet your goals. Is that really the case, or are there examples that show you don't need a huge, expensive camera, you just need to love birds? Please share your thoughts. What's your opinion on this? Does being a bird watcher have to be expensive or not?
Yes, I'll start, if I may. Well, it depends on what kind of bird watcher you become. There are many types of bird watchers. Some people really strive to take the sharpest, brightest photos possible, and so they buy the most expensive, latest equipment. But there are bird watchers, for example, who use other devices. They call them by different names and don't even consider them real cameras. They say that if you can't identify a bird in the field right then and there and have to look it up later, you're not a real bird watcher, and so on. So in any case, you can start even without binoculars or a camera. The main thing is the desire and the free time to go out to the park and pause for a bit to observe, to watch what's happening in the animal world. Because something is always going on, some kind of tragedy for someone is giving birth or hatching, somewhere there's a fight, there are always some emotional moments happening. If you already notice this, you're already a bird watcher, an observer of nature. You've managed to pause everything, and then you can apply technique or running techniques to bird watching. It all depends only on you. Desire, time, a park, nature, that's all you need.
Thank you. Julia, and do those with the most advanced equipment win at competitions from a technical standpoint?
At our competitions, as I've already mentioned, there are different categories. There's a category for beginners and a category for professionals. So if people are encountering bird watching for the first time, they can take part in the competition in the beginners category. When you're just starting out, you can even begin with the camera on your mobile phone. You don't necessarily need to invest in a lot of expensive, high-end equipment right away. However, if you find yourself getting hooked, if you get completely drawn into the craft, it's almost a guarantee that, of course, you'll naturally want to start taking better and progressively higher quality photos as you go. So, yes, I think that someone who gets passionate about it will eventually want to get good camera equipment. After all, it's very difficult to photograph birds with a mobile phone. Well, for beginners, as I've already mentioned, we generally recommend that if you've never observed birds before, start with feeders. Feeders are best, let's say, if you don't live in warm countries. But in those countries where birds fly away for the winter, in more northern countries, you hang up a feeder in winter and you can spot those 10 to 15 species of birds that come to the feeder. Take the time to observe them and really get to know them. Listen to their calls all throughout the winter. And by the time spring arrives, you'll have memorized these wonderful species.
Thank you. And now this will probably be the final question. I heard about bird calls, and someone from our participants mentioned a story about buying a whistle that made a sound which attracted birds. How appropriate is it in general to use sounds to attract birds during birding, whether as observation or as a competition? Or is it not appropriate at all? In any format, is it okay to attract birds to yourself with some kind of sound? Is this ecological? Is it allowed to do this?
From my point of view, it is unethical. I do it myself, but I don't recommend it because for birds, singing is a very important signal. They don't just sing beautifully for us. They are actually communicating. They are defending their territory. And sometimes this kind of lure can have a negative effect. It can affect the bird. It might fly away or it might abandon its nest or territory because, for example, you have a powerful speaker that you're using to attract it, and it might think that there's some very strong male singing in front of it and that it's better not to compete with him. That's why I recommend, not just when it comes to rainbirds, but in general, when observing nature or going on hikes anywhere, not to leave any trace, no trash, no audio trace, no other kind of trace at all. We should act as observers as much as possible and not interact with the creatures living there in any way.
I want to say that this is a question that doesn't have a clear-cut answer. We've discussed this a lot, we constantly discuss it, and we continue to discuss this question with professional ornithologists, and they have different opinions. For example, our colleagues in Tomsk, when we were developing the regulations for the competition in Tomsk, we discussed it with them as well. They believe that it's acceptable to attract birds, but only in limited amounts, and I mean by making sounds myself. For example, in our case, in spring, we strongly advise against doing this because here, Nikolai is absolutely right. Birds get distracted, they might abandon what they're doing, but in autumn, there's nothing particularly catastrophic about attracting birds. At least that's not just my opinion. It's the opinion of the ornithologists we consult with regarding the competition rules. Well, let's put it this way. At our pedestrian competitions, we have a strict rule that you cannot use a phone to play sounds for attracting birds. You can make sounds with your lips, that's allowed. So if someone manages to
pull it off, right?
Yes. If you can be like a bird, that's really the highest level of skill, but communicate with the bird the same way it would communicate with other birds. So that's the answer. There is no definitive solution, and ornithologists don't have a unanimous opinion on this topic. But in spring, it's definitely better not to use it. So
we can certainly sing like birds, yes, but you should really avoid doing it in the springtime. That's when birds are completely focused on their most important tasks of all, specifically breeding and then raising their young. To our esteemed guests, our distinguished experts, and our insightful speakers, I want to sincerely thank you for sharing your profound knowledge and valuable inspiration with all of us. And to our dear participants, we also thank you for your valuable time and attention. We truly hope our broadcast has been informative and has inspired you today. If you plan to go bird watching in the near future, please put a plus sign in the chat. And I would just like to take a moment to remind you that we have now officially entered the final and concluding week of our incredibly important Global Environmental Marathon, which is scheduled to come to its official conclusion on the 20th of this month, this coming Saturday. There is still plenty of time for you to organize a community cleanup, go out to observe the local birds, or complete some of the other important tasks from our ongoing environmental marathon. To do this, please fill out the form or write to us in the chat to let us know you want to join, and our community manager will provide all the necessary instructions so you can gain this experience of environmental activism, earn points, and meet like-minded people. We bring together all participants of our challenge from all 16 countries in a single communication space, a single community. Well, on that note, I want to see what responses we have here. Oh, by the way, the plus signs are coming in. People are going to go bird watching soon, so you were very inspiring, Nikolai and Julia. Thank you. With that, our event is over. I am saying goodbye to you all. See you next time. We will definitely come up with great topics so we can meet and talk again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Afton. Bye. Take care. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.